What's up, people? Welcome back to Jay's Reaction. And as I said earlier in my previous upload, I made mention of taking a different approach on the stories I'll be covering. And before I get into this story, I want to introduce this guy, Mr. Ballin. I think he's on YouTube, one of the greatest storytellers I've ever encountered, if not the best so far in the world. I came across this guy's channel on I think almost 4 years now, Mr. Ballin. I mean, I just keep watching his video non-stop because of how great he is as storytelling. I've been watching his story non-stop since I came on YouTube. Like every Saturday, I think Saturday, Monday, and Wednesday he posts, and I always watch his stories. Not because the stories are engaging or anything, but the approach he uses in telling his stories are very captivating, and it's gonna like reel you in. You won't wanna even like you wanna watch everything till the end. And the stories are not just stories he made up. They are stories with proof and everything. You can go and research on them, and he tackles stories from all walks of life. I mean, from every continent, from some of the tragic stories you can think about, some of the stories with the craziest twists to the unfortunate endings, and any like all sort of stories you can think about. Some stories that are somehow connected to how some people became successful, but they always have this twist. He has a way of putting it that you'll be surprised at the end. I mean, the guy is just great at storytelling, and I don't want to even like go on talking about it. I just want us to watch this first story I'm reacting to, and after that, you people can comment and share and like as usual, subscribe, share or love as usual. Okay. So I don't want to waste any time. Let's just get into the story. And if there's anything to say, I'm sure I'm gonna see it at the ending again. So yeah.
Today, I'm going to share with you three progressively more disturbing stories, and at the end of each of them, I will share the photo or photos that are famously associated with them. But before we get into today's stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right channel because that's all we do, and we upload 3 or 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, please offer to house sit for the like button, and while you're there, split all of their 2-ply toilet paper into 1-ply. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss.
Yeah, I think he just gave an explanation how you have to go about even liking the video, and you saw the twist behind it. You could have just said you kind of like, but you went about saying a whole lot of things. This is just the beginning, you guys can subscribe to me and go and be watching the story. But I feel like you guys have to watch this one before maybe I don't know. No, I don't know if everybody will be like okay with the way the story goes, but trust me, if you're into storytelling, and even if you're not into storytelling, I'm sure this one will like you find yourself watching this one, binging on it, like for real, You're gonna find yourself binging on it.
Miss any of our weekly uploads. All right, let's get into today's stories. In 1992, 41-year-old Marvin Heemeyer purchased a plot of land in the small town of Granby, Colorado. There, for the next decade, he would run a muffler shop. Then, in the early 2000s, a cement company approached him and asked if they could buy a portion of his land so they could build a plant. And at first, Marvin was not really interested in the idea, but the cement company was offering a lot of money. And so Marvin came around to the idea, and after a long negotiation, Marvin and this company were about to sign a contract when Granby's zoning commission informed the cement company they didn't need to buy Marvin's property in order to build this plant. They could actually build it right next to Marvin's property. The cement company was thrilled. Marvin was furious. Not only was he losing a ton of money with this deal falling through, but also he used to use that plot of land that sat next to his property as a cut through between his house and his muffler shop. Marvin immediately began petitioning the town to try to stop the construction of this plant, but he was repeatedly rejected. And within a year, the plant was built right next to Marvin's property. A couple of years later, on the afternoon of June 4th, 2004, Granby residents heard a very loud sound that almost sounded like thunder coming from somewhere in the town. And so they ran outside to see what it was. When they looked down the road, they saw it. It was a fully armored bulldozer coming right down the center of town. The sides, the top, the back, the front, the whole thing was completely encased in steel sheets. And in some parts, the steel was over a foot thick. Traveling at 4 miles an hour, its treads were enormous, and as it went over the road, it was taking huge bites out of the ground. There was no way to tell who was actually driving this bulldozer because there were no windows. And in fact, the person who was in there had welded themselves inside, and they had installed cameras on the outside so they could see where they were going. Terrified residents ran for cover and began calling 911. Over the next 2 hours, this homemade assault vehicle would go on a rampage, destroying 13 buildings, starting with the cement plant. After that, it turned around and went straight through the town hall, it turned and went through a bank, and then it went through the police station, and then the local newspaper, and then it also went through a local hardware store and the house of the former mayor. The police tried to box the bulldozer in using their biggest vehicles, but it just easily pushed them aside. SWAT team showed up and began engaging this vehicle with their largest caliber armor-piercing rounds, but none of them went through it. Finally, one of the treads on the bulldozer got stuck in a basement, and it kind of tilted the machine on its side, and it couldn't go anywhere. And then very shortly after that, the engine finally died. It would take authorities 7 hours to finally cut through the armor of this killdozer. And when they looked inside, they found that Marvin was the one driving it, and he had taken his own life. Marvin had spent the past year and a half building up this bulldozer specifically so he could seek revenge on the zoning committee as well as other town officials that he felt screwed him. Marvin was the only fatality, but before he died, he caused over $7 million in damages. Here are some real images of Marvin's killdozer.
Well, I think you just saw one of the stories. I don't know how you people are going to react to it, but please, like the comment section, you people can talk about it, how you felt about the stories and everything, okay? But this is just a little bit about how you goes about talking about this. I feel like this ones are just like just bits of three stories he just made together to talk about in this particular video. But he has so many interesting stories that are have been, how am I going to say, kind of like categorized in their own form or way that you can just watch and be like, I'm gonna bring everything to you guys. I'm gonna like try my best and bring a whole lot for you guys because I think I've recommended to some people when I was before I started my YouTube channel and they really liked it and felt like maybe I have to start covering some of these stories on my channel. But let's get back to the story, okay?
On the evening of December 19, 2016, 62-year-old Russian ambassador Andrei Karlov was ushered into a famous art museum in Turkey. There, Andrei was going to deliver a speech at the opening of an exhibition of Turkish photography that featured the Russian countryside. Andrei had been a Russian government employee for the past 40 years, spending much of his time in North Korea, but in 2013 he took this post as the ambassador to Turkey. Although he was a seasoned diplomat, he knew there was a lot riding on this visit. His appearance there was following several days of protests by Turks against Russian involvement in the Syrian civil war. Andrei was there to ease the strain in Turkish-Russian relations as officials from both countries met to broker a ceasefire in Syria. As Andrei made his way across the room, he had a lot of things on his mind, but one thing he wasn't concerned about was his own safety. The museum had state-of-the-art security cameras, and everyone who was going to be attending his speech had been carefully screened and vetted. Andrei was also protected by his own personal bodyguards. There were these men in dark suits that fanned out around him as he stepped up to the microphone. The bodyguard who stood directly behind him was 22-year-old Melvit Altuntaş. He was a Turkish native who for 2.5 years had served on an elite riot police unit, and over the past year, he had been asked 8 separate times to be on the personal security detail of the Turkish president. Andrei looked down at the podium at his notes, and then he looked up at the room that was filled with journalists and dignitaries, and he composed himself, he cleared his voice, and he began to speak. Behind him, Mevlut, the bodyguard, opened his jacket slightly and continued staring at the back of Andrei's head. And then in one swift motion, he drew a pistol and fired 3 shots into the ambassador's back. And then when the ambassador fell to the ground, Mevlut moved on top of him and fired 4 more shots, killing him. Guests started screaming and running for cover. Meanwhile, Mevlut pointed his finger into the sky and yelled, "Do not forget Aleppo, do not forget Syria." And then he began walking around the exhibit, smashing the pictures on the wall before Turkish security forces showed up. There was a gunfight and Mevlut was killed. It would turn out Mevlut was not a part of Andrei Karlov's security detail. He was actually off duty, but had used his police credentials to get into the exhibit hall. His exact motive for the assassination is unclear. Some think it was revenge for Russia's targeting of rebel-held areas in Aleppo. Others say the shooting was designed to disrupt warming relations between Turkey and Russia. But regardless of why it happened, what the world remembers from this event is the award-winning photograph that was taken of Mevlut immediately after he committed the attack. Here is that photo.
Oh God, some of the stories I don't know what to even say
In the
about them.
fall of 2015, 21-year-old Otto Warmbier was a gifted student at the University of Virginia. He had a passion for seeing new and faraway places, and so one day when he was on campus and he saw an ad for a trip going to one of the most secretive places in the world, North Korea, he jumped at the opportunity to go. The tour was being run by a group called the Young Pioneers, whose slogan was, "We take you to places that your mother would rather you stayed away from." But they promised their tours were totally safe. Initially, Otto's parents were not too keen on the idea of their son going to North Korea, but when they saw how excited he was about going on this trip, they ultimately said, "Okay, we'll let you go." On December 29, 2015, Otto met up with the other 10 members of this tour group at the airport. They all climbed inside an old Soviet jet, and they took off for North Korea. 15 hours later, they arrived at Pyongyang International Airport, and as soon as they got off the plane, the North Korean border police came right up to them, confiscated their cameras, and then checked their phones for any subversive material. After a few tense minutes, they gave them their phones back and allowed them to leave. The group went straight to their hotel, and before they went inside, they noticed a clearly anti-American billboard right outside. And it made the group very uneasy because they were all American. But they collectively decided that this was just part of the experience and they shouldn't be worried or concerned about it. And before long, they had totally let their guard down and they were out enjoying the sights and sounds of the capital city. At one point, Otto and some others even got into a snowball fight with some North Korean children. By New Year's Eve, the group felt completely normal walking around North Korea, and so they headed to this huge party at Kim Il-sung Square with thousands of other North Koreans. And then after that was over, they headed back to their hotel and continued to drink. The hotel they were staying in was designed to entertain foreigners. In addition to their bar and 5 restaurants in the lobby, they had a massage parlor, a sauna, a bowling alley. I mean, this group was totally living it up. The following morning, which was the day of their departure from North Korea, Otto was one of the last people of the group to hand his passport to airport officials. And when he did, it seemed like they spent a lot of time looking at it and then looking at Otto and then talking to each other in Korean. And then at some point, 2 North Korean soldiers just appeared out of nowhere behind Otto, tapped him on the shoulder. Otto turned around and they grabbed him by the arm and led him away. The others from the group that saw this happen would say Otto didn't put up any resistance and didn't look scared. He just walked with them. Later, North Korea would release grainy CCTV footage taken from inside the hotel where Otto and the group was staying that showed this unidentifiable figure walking into a restricted area, pulling a poster off of the wall. And the North Koreans were saying that figure was Otto. After taking Otto from the airport, North Korean officials said they found the poster that had been stolen in Otto's possession. And they accused him of a very serious crime in North Korea, which is damaging or stealing any item that has the picture or name of the North Korean leader on it. Otto was sent to jail and the rest of his group was told to leave. 2 months later, on February 29th, the North Korean government released a video that showed Otto walking into a North Korean courtroom. His head is down and his hands are cuffed. They walk him into the center of the room and sit him down in front of this long table, and he's looking out to the sea of reporters and courtroom officials. And he proceeds to confess to his crime. The way he describes what he did is so bizarre that many people believe it was a forced confession scripted by his interrogators. Otto says he put on his quietest boots, the best for sneaking, and then snuck his way into the hotel where he stole the poster. He claimed a local Methodist church, a university's secret society, and the American administration all collectively pushed him to do
What?
this. He said his actions were intentionally designed to hurt the work ethic and motivation of the Korean people. And he also said he was impressed with the North Korean government's humanitarian treatment of himself, considering he was a severe criminal. And then after his nearly 2-minute long confession, he stands up and bows to the court, and then appears to break character and begs for forgiveness. And he's quickly ushered out. A month later, the North Korean court would convict Otto and sentence him to 15 years of hard labor. But after 17 months of intense political pressure, North Korea agreed to release Otto and send him back to the United States.
Yes.
Now, to this point, nobody had had a chance to communicate with Otto while he was in prison. And so when he was sent back, he was not the same Otto. He had suffered some unexplained head injury and was in a coma. When Otto's parents saw him for the first time, they barely recognized him. They said it looked like his lower teeth had been moved around with pliers, and they found a large scar on his foot that they didn't recognize. North Korea denied any intentional mistreatment of Otto. They said he fell into this coma after contracting botulism, which is a very rare form of food poisoning that can be deadly. Once Otto was back under American medical care, doctors did everything they could to try to get him out of this coma, but there was nothing they could do. He was in a persistent vegetative state, and he had already suffered severe brain damage. And so on June 19th, 2017, just 6 days after Otto was back in the United States, his parents made the heartbreaking decision to remove him from life support, and he died shortly thereafter. To this day, no one really knows what actually happened to Otto. Here is one of the final photos of Otto while he was still alive and healthy, taken right after his strange confession. He's holding back tears and begging for mercy, but mercy would not come. So that's going to do it, guys. If you found the secret in today's episode, let us know in the comments what it is and where you found it. So give us the timestamp.
Yeah, I think that's the last and that's the ending of the story. Like North Korea, I don't know, even I would even advise my Western him to go to that country, because the stories that we heard from that country alone, Charlie, it's too much. It's too much. But some people just like the thrill, the adventure of risking it all and going into these areas or this part of the world, and you can't blame them. Sometimes people just like having fun and exploring. There's nothing wrong with it though, but you have to be careful at the same time, because sometimes you don't know where you're gonna find yourself. But that's the end of the episode. I'm gonna bring more of his stories to you guys, and if you really liked it, you can like, comment and subscribe once again. This is just the beginning of the stories, and a whole lot is gonna come. I promise you guys. So nice. Thank you guys for tuning in once again, and till we meet again. It's your mind. Sorry, it's your boy Jay.